Deep in space, where light from stars rarely reached, there was a place called the Veil Zone. Ships that entered it often vanished without a trace. Some said it was cursed, others said it was protected by something ancient. But no one had ever come back to explain what truly lived there. The human ship Halcyon floated into this darkness with slow engines and cautious eyes. It was a science and diplomacy vessel, sent by Earth's Intergalactic Council to explore unknown areas. The crew was small, only 12 people, but each of them was trained for strange and dangerous encounters. Leading the mission was Captain Alira Grant, a strong woman with gray eyes and calm leadership. But it was the ship's xenopsychologist, Jordan Vale, who had the most curiosity about the Veil Zone. Jordan wasn't a soldier. He studied emotions, languages, and the minds of alien life. Where others saw danger, he saw mystery. As the ship moved deeper into the Veil Zone, strange signals began to reach their sensors. There were no known languages, just patterns, low, pulsing waves that almost sounded like breathing. "It's not static," Jordan said as he listened to the strange sound. "It's alive." The crew grew nervous. Even the artificial lights inside the ship seemed dimmer here. Systems flickered and the air felt heavy. Alira suggested turning back, but the council had given orders. Make contact if possible. So, they moved forward. That night, when the ship was quiet, something appeared outside. It was not a ship. It was not a creature in the normal sense. It was a presence. A shifting form made of shadow and light standing outside the window of the bridge without being in space. The crew froze. They couldn't move. They couldn't think. Fear filled the room like cold water. But Jordan stepped forward. The figure seemed to grow larger, feeding off the fear around it. Every emotion of terror made it stronger, clearer. It moved like smoke, yet its voice echoed like it came from inside each person's mind. "You fear me, as all do. This is what I am." Jordan swallowed, but he did not run. "What are you?" he asked calmly. There was a pause. The figure moved closer to him, floating, shifting. It expected him to fall, to cry, to freeze. "I am Alara," it said. "I am nourished by what you give so freely. Fear. Your kind will feed me well." Jordan tilted his head. "Is that all you've ever known?" The figure paused again. That question was unexpected. It had met many beings, and all of them feared. None had spoken like this before. It tried to press deeper into Jordan's mind, pulling memories of loss, pain, fear. But something resisted. Jordan didn't block the pain. He accepted it. He looked straight into the face of fear and didn't turn away. "You can feel my fear, can't you?" he said. "But you also feel something else, don't you? Curiosity, calm." Xylara moved back slightly. The other humans were still frozen, breathing fast, eyes wide. But Jordan stood like a warm flame in the dark, small, but steady. "You are different," she whispered. Jordan nodded. "Maybe. Or maybe you just never looked close enough." Suddenly, the darkness faded slightly. The lights on the bridge stopped flickering. Some of the crew blinked, coming, back to themselves. The pressure in the air lessened. Xylara watched Jordan carefully. For the first time in centuries, she didn't feed. Something inside her paused. A question had formed. A doubt. She vanished without a sound. Captain Alira ran to Jordan. "What did you do?" she asked, stunned. "I talked to her," Jordan said simply, "and I think she listened." From that moment on, things changed. The ship was no longer pulled by fear. Signals still echoed around them, but now they were slower, like a waiting breath. The Halcyon held position in the Veil Zone, not trapped, but invited. Jordan knew the danger wasn't gone, but something powerful had happened. He had spoken to a creature that had only ever known fear, and instead of breaking him, she had paused, just for a second. Sometimes that's all it takes. Jaylara hovered in the void, far from the human ship now. Her body wasn't made of flesh. It was energy, shadow, and thought. She drifted between dimensions, within her hive's ancient realm. But even here, far from light and time, something was wrong. She couldn't stop thinking about him, the human, Jordan Vale. She had fed from thousands of species. All feared her. It was natural. It was the only way. Fear gave her strength. Terror gave her power. But Jordan's mind was not like the others. He had fear inside, yes, but he didn't surrender to it. Instead of running or hiding, he had spoken, asked questions, showed concern, and, worse, curiosity. It made no sense. Her kind had always believed that courage was weakness pretending to be strength. Yet, in front of her, Jordan had stood firm, not with weapons, but with words. And she had felt something in herself stir. Not hunger, not power, something unfamiliar. Meanwhile, on the Halcyon, the crew tried to recover from the encounter. Captain Elira held emergency meetings. Some crew members wanted to leave the Veil Zone immediately. Others wanted to stay and study the strange being. Jordan stayed quiet during the debates. He spent hours listening to the signals still echoing in the ship's systems. They weren't random anymore. They had rhythm. He believed Jaylara was trying to speak, not through words, but through patterns. "She's waiting," he told Elira. "She wants to understand me, too." The captain looked at him carefully. "Jordan, I don't know what you did, but be careful. You're dealing with something we still don't understand." He nodded. "I will, but I think understanding is the key." Later, in the quiet of the observation room, Jaylara returned. She didn't appear with fear this time. No darkness filled the air. No chilling wind swept through the ship. Instead, she shimmered like a distant reflection in the glass, half seen and half felt. Jordan sat calmly and looked at her. "You came back," he said. "You are not like the others," she replied, her voice softer now. "Why do you not fear me as they do?" "I do fear you," he said honestly, "but I don't let it control me." She watched him in silence. "I've lost people," Jordan continued. "I've seen death. I've felt helpless. But fear only controls you if you let it." Jaylara floated closer. "My kind was born from fear. We shaped ourselves through it. It is what we are." "Is it what you want to be?" Jordan asked gently. Jaylara didn't answer. For the first time in her existence, she didn't know. Her kind had always believed fear was a gift, but Jordan's calm defied all their logic, and that defiance did not feel like danger. It felt like light touching old walls. "When I reached into your mind," she said, "I found grief and stillness." Jordan smiled faintly. "Yes. My sister died on a mission like this. I was afraid to come here, but I came anyway. Sometimes you have to walk into the dark to find something worth bringing back." His words struck something inside her, an old memory, not hers, but her species, a time before they had fully turned into what they were now, a time when fear was not food, but a warning, a tool. Something had changed over eons, and they had forgotten the difference. She floated back slightly, her form flickering. "You make me doubt," she whispered. "Maybe that's good," Jordan said. "Doubt means you're thinking for yourself." They sat like that, one human and one ancient being, sharing a moment that didn't exist in any science book or council manual. No violence, no war, just thoughts and quiet voices. Jaylara vanished once more, but not with hunger this time. She left with questions. Back in her realm, Zylara reached out to her hive. The other Virel felt her unease. They sent thoughts of warning. One of them, a powerful elder named Karez, sent a mental command. Cut contact with the human. His courage is poison. But she didn't respond. She sat in silence, feeling something strange moving in her. She thought about Jordan's steady eyes, his voice, his pain, and his peace. Fear had always been her nourishment, but now, it didn't satisfy her as it once did. She wanted to know why, and that scared her more than any human ever could. Zylara drifted in the darkness, surrounded by the endless hum of her hive. The ancient walls of her dimension pulsed, vibrating with the energy of her kind. Yet, for the first time in her existence, she felt no comfort in it. The usual calmness that filled her mind, the steady flow of fear from countless beings across the galaxy, now felt hollow. Instead, she found herself thinking about him again. Jordan Vale. His presence had disturbed her. At first, she had thought it was simply his strange calm, his refusal to show fear. But now, after hours, perhaps days, of silence, Zylara realized it was more than that. He had made her doubt. She had fed from countless species, each consumed by their own fear. It was the foundation of her being, the very essence that allowed her kind to thrive for eons. Fear was what bound them together, what gave them strength. But Jordan had shown her something else, something she had never seen before. Courage. She couldn't understand it. How could a being be brave without fear? How could they resist the pull of terror and still stand strong? "You make me weak," she whispered to herself. For a moment, she wondered if her species had made a mistake, perhaps a terrible one. Maybe their understanding of power, their reliance on fear, was all wrong. Perhaps they had lost sight of what truly made life strong. Zyara's thoughts were interrupted by a voice, a sharp presence in her mind. Karez, the eldest of the Virel, sent a wave of thought to her. His voice was heavy with authority. "You are straying too far from your purpose, Zylara," he warned. "The human is dangerous. His influence could lead our entire species into weakness. We are predators. We thrive on fear. You know this." But Zylara did not respond. Immediately, her thoughts lingered on Jordan's steady gaze, his words. She could almost feel his presence again, his calm in the midst of the unknown. For the first time, she was unsure of her own instincts. "I am not like them," she said quietly. "I do not need to be." The hive was silent, but Karez's presence in her mind grew stronger. "You will regret this, Zylara," he said. "We will not allow this weakness to spread. Fear must remain the core of our existence. If you will not destroy the human, we will." Zylara shuddered. The force of Karez's thoughts was like a slap against her own mind. He was right in one sense. Her hesitation could lead to disaster. But in her heart, she knew that something was changing. She didn't understand it, but she could no longer pretend it didn't matter. The darkness in her realm seemed to close in tighter around her. Fear had always been her nourishment, but it felt more like a chain now. It was a chain that she was beginning to question. On the Halcyon, Jordan continued his work. He spent hours analyzing the signals, trying to understand the patterns that seemed to repeat. It wasn't just a random pattern. There was meaning in it. He was certain of it. While the crew continued their work, Jordan had become consumed with his desire to learn more about the Virel. He knew that Zylara was not just some monster lurking in the darkness. She was something more. She was a being shaped by the very thing he had always avoided, the thing that was destroying so many lives, fear. But he believed there was hope. There had to be. If courage could change one life, then perhaps it could change a species. And if anyone had the power to make a difference, it was the Virel, whose reach extended across the galaxy. Captain Elira approached Jordan in the observation room. "You're still trying to contact her, aren't you?" she asked quietly. Jordan nodded without looking up. "Yes, I believe she's waiting for something. She doesn't understand what's happening to her." Elira sighed, taking a seat across from him. "I don't know what you did to her, Jordan. But I don't think the Varel will just let us be. They are predators, and they've ruled this part of space for centuries." "I know," Jordan said, "but I think there's a chance. She's not like the others. Zaylara is different." Elira leaned forward, concern on her face. "You can't save everyone, Jordan. If they decide to attack us, we won't stand a chance. You've seen what they can do." Jordan's voice remained steady. "I'm not trying to save everyone. I'm trying to understand her. If we can understand why she feels this doubt, maybe we can show her something more than fear." Elira looked at him, unsure. "And if she doesn't change?" "I'll make her understand," Jordan said quietly, his determination clear. Back in her realm, Zaylara began to feel something new. The anger that had once come so easily, the instinct to strike, to destroy, now felt hollow. Instead of the fear of other creatures, she felt an unexplainable sadness. What had she become? As she hovered in the empty space of her dimension, the question loomed in her mind. Was there more to life than feeding on fear? And, more importantly, could she ever escape the hunger that had defined her entire existence? Zaylara had never been like the other Varel. She knew that now, more clearly than ever. The hesitation, the doubt, these feelings were foreign to her, and yet they had taken root deep within her being. For the first time in her existence, fear no longer felt like strength, it felt like a prison. As the days passed in her dimension, she could feel the pull of the human ship, still floating in the Veil Zone. The signals from the Halcyon continued to resonate in the back of her mind. It was as though Jordan's calm, his quiet courage was constantly calling her. Zaylara had fed on fear for eons, and yet here she was, feeling the faintest stirrings of something else, something unsettling, but at the same time, intriguing. The more she tried to push the thoughts away, the more they came back, like shadows that refused to be chased off. "What is this?" she whispered to herself, her voice carrying through the empty space. "What is happening to me?" It was the first time she had asked herself those questions, and she wasn't sure if she wanted the answers. Meanwhile, on the Halcyon, Jordan spent his nights studying the signals. He had been in contact with the ship's computer system, trying to decode the patterns that the Varel were sending. There was no doubt in his mind, the Varel were trying to communicate. They had been reaching out, slowly, deliberately, for days. He was not afraid. He knew the danger they faced, but his curiosity about the Varel, and especially Zaylara, drove him forward. He believed there was more to them than the legends told. These were not mere monsters. They were sentient beings, capable of change, capable of growth. He saw something in Zayalara's hesitation that made him believe she was not beyond saving. "I can't do this alone," Jordan said to Elira one evening as they sat in the ship's briefing room. "We need to make contact with her again. There's a chance, just a chance, that she might listen." Elira frowned, her fingers tapping nervously on the table. "Jordan, you've already made contact. What if it isn't enough? What if the Varel decide to attack us before you can change her mind?" Jordan looked at her, his face steady but his eyes filled with determination. "Then we'll deal with it, but I can't stop now. I believe that Zaylara can be shown another way. She's not like the others. She's different." Elira studied him for a moment before nodding. "You have my support, but you know the risks. If she's ready to attack, we won't have much time." Jordan nodded. He knew the risks. But he also knew that they had no choice. If they didn't try, the situation would only get worse. Zaylara felt the presence of the Halcyon again. Their signals had grown stronger, clearer. She could feel Jordan's thoughts, his curiosity, his determination, and she couldn't escape them. She could feel the seed of doubt, planted the last time they had spoken, growing inside her, demanding to be addressed. "Why do you resist me?" she asked aloud, her voice barely a whisper. "Why do you make me question everything I know?" Her words echoed through the empty space around her, but no answer came. She was alone. Jelara's thoughts swirled. She could feel the hunger rising within her, the urge to consume, to take the fear of others and make herself stronger. It was all she had ever known. But now, the thought of doing that to Jordan or any other creature left her feeling empty. It wasn't enough. It never would be. And so, for the first time in centuries, Zylara decided to do something she had never done before. She hesitated. She reached out, not with her usual methods of fear and illusion, but with something else, something uncertain. She reached out to Jordan. On the halcyon, Jordan was in the observation room staring out at the vast, empty space. He didn't know what to expect, but he had a feeling that something was about to change. His hands rested. On the console in front of him, his mind focused on the strange signals from the Virel. And then, as if from nowhere, Zylara's presence filled the room. At first, there was only silence. Then her voice came, calm, hesitant, but unmistakably hers. "I have felt your thoughts," she said, "and I do not understand." Jordan's heart raced. He hadn't expected this. He hadn't expected her to come willingly. But there she was, reaching out, speaking to him. "I know you don't understand," Jordan said softly. "But you're asking the right questions. Fear doesn't have to be all there is. It can be a tool, but it's not the only way." Zylara's form flickered in the air, and Jordan could feel the weight of her confusion. "Then what am I to do?" she asked, almost as if she was searching for something. "What is this feeling inside me?" Jordan smiled, though she couldn't see it. "It's called curiosity, and it's the beginning of something new." For the first time, Zylara felt a spark of something other than hunger. It was faint, but it was there, a glimmer of something that could grow. She wasn't sure what it meant or what would come of it, but for now, she allowed herself to feel it. And for the first time in her life, Zylara felt the tiniest seed of hope. Zylara hovered in the dark void, suspended between thought and action. She could still feel the faint stirrings of something inside her. The curiosity that Jordan had sparked, the small, flickering sense of hope, wasn't fading. It was growing. But so was the pressure from her own kind. She had never been truly alone before. The hive was always with her, always guiding her. Fear was their essence. It was what made them strong, what made them the dominant force in the galaxy. But Jordan had shown her something different, something she had never felt or considered before, peace without fear. And now it was as if the entire hive was watching her. The other Virel, especially Kaurez, had sensed her hesitation. They could feel the shift in her energy, the change that was slowly happening inside her. It had not gone unnoticed. Kaurez's presence grew stronger in her mind, like a dark cloud hovering overhead. "Zylara," his voice rumbled, heavy and full of authority. "You are treading dangerous ground. You have felt it, haven't you? The weakness in your mind, the doubt. This human, this Jordan Vale, is changing you." Zylara's thoughts flitted to the human, his calm eyes, his steady presence. How could one small being make her feel so uncertain? Her kind had always fed on the terror of others. They had ruled the stars, and yet here she was, questioning everything. "I have not changed," she replied, her voice quiet but firm. "I am still who I was." Karaz's voice echoed in her mind, more forceful now. "You are wrong. You are becoming weak. And if you do not stop this foolishness, You will bring ruin to us all. The human must be destroyed, or he will undo everything we have built." Zylara trembled at his words. She knew that Kerez's thoughts held power, and she had always respected his authority. But she also knew that something inside her was different now. Something was pulling her away from the darkness, away from the hunger. It was small, but it was real. On the Halcyon, Jordan spent every waking moment trying to understand the signals the Varel were sending. He was becoming more certain by the day that they weren't simply random bursts of energy. The Varel were trying to communicate. They were reaching out, seeking something, and Jordan believed it was him they were reaching for. He couldn't shake the feeling that the Varel, especially Zylara, were on the brink of something profound. But he also knew that the Varel were dangerous. Their history of destruction and fear was well known, and there was no guarantee that Zylara's change of heart would be enough to stop the inevitable. Still, he couldn't give up. Not now. One evening, as he stared out into the endless dark of the Veil Zone, Elira joined him in the observation room. She had been watching him, her concern growing with each passing day. "You're still trying to reach her, aren't you?" she asked quietly. Jordan turned to her, his expression calm but determined. "I have to. I believe she can be different. She's not like the others. She's changing." Elira shook her head, her eyes full of worry. "Jordan, you're gambling with our lives. We don't know what the Varel will do if they feel threatened, if they see you as a danger." "I know," he interrupted softly, "but I don't think she'll let anything happen. She's not the monster we thought she was. Zylara is questioning everything, and maybe, just maybe, that's the first step." Elira sighed, her shoulders slumping slightly. "I wish I could share your optimism, but if you're wrong, we'll all be in danger." "I'm not wrong," Jordan said firmly. "I can feel it. Zylara is changing." Zylara felt the weight of the hive's presence grow heavier. Kerez's thoughts pressed against her mind, his warnings echoing louder with each passing moment. But the more she resisted, the more she found herself drawn back to Jordan, to the human who had stood in front of her without fear, who had shown her that there was another way. "You must choose," Kerez's voice rang out in her mind. "This human is dangerous. His ideas will weaken us. You must stop him before it's too late." Zylara closed her eyes, her mind swirling. She could feel the pressure of the hive's collective will. It was stronger than anything she had ever felt, a force that demanded obedience, that demanded fear. But then she thought of Jordan, his steady gaze, his words. "There is another way," she whispered to herself. "I don't have to feed on fear. I don't have to be what they say I am." But the fear, the deep, primal fear that had always been her nourishment, was still there, gnawing at her. She couldn't simply ignore it. She was a creature of darkness, of hunger. She had lived for centuries with fear at her core, but could there be something more? Could she break free from the chains that had bound her for so long? The more she thought about it, the more she realized that the choice was hers. She could continue down the path that Kerez and the hive wanted, a path of destruction and fear. Or she could choose something different, something she didn't fully understand, something unknown, and the human, Jordan Vale, was the key. Zylara's form flickered in the darkness. She didn't know what would happen if she chose this new path. She didn't know if the Varel would accept it, or if they would destroy her for it. But one thing was certain. She couldn't go back to the way things were. The question was no longer whether she could change. The question was whether she had the courage to do it. The pressure from the hive was immense. Zylara had never felt so alone, even though her mind was surrounded by the collective thoughts of her kind. The Varel were not individuals. They were a unity, a collective force that had always acted as one. But now, the pull of doubt and curiosity was growing stronger, And Xylara felt herself pulled in two directions, the path of fear and the uncertain path of change. Her mind kept returning to Jordan, the human who had shown her a glimpse of something beyond fear. It wasn't courage alone that had moved her. It was something deeper, something almost impossible to understand. Was it hope? Trust? Or was it simply the potential for something new? And so, she found herself standing at the crossroads. The path she had always known was clear and simple. Feed, strengthen, grow more powerful. Fear was her ally. But the path Jordan had shown her was clouded, uncertain, and dangerous. If she walked this path, there would be no going back. She would leave behind everything she had ever known. The hive, Karez, all of it. But what if there was something more? Something worth risking everything for? On the Halcyon, Jordan felt the weight of the decision pressing on him as well. The Varel were watching. He could sense it. He knew that time was running out. If Xylara didn't make a choice soon, the Varel would take matters into their own hands. He had no way of knowing whether she was truly changing or whether it was all just a fleeting hope, but he couldn't stop trying. He continued to study the signals, searching for any clue that might reveal Xylara's thoughts. But he knew the truth. The Varel were not just a physical threat. Their power lay in their ability to influence minds. They fed on fear, yes, but they also knew how to manipulate emotions, how to break a person's spirit without even touching them. Jordan had to be careful. He couldn't just hope that Xylara would choose the path of peace. He had to find a way to help her make that choice, to show her that there was a future beyond the shadows. Xylara stood at the edge of her dimension, her thoughts a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. The choice before her seemed impossible, but she could feel something pulling her toward the human ship, toward Jordan. The thought of him filled her mind, his calm voice, his steady presence. He was like a light in the darkness, a presence that had made her feel something she had never felt before. Warmth. She reached out with her thoughts, slowly at first, then more confidently. The signals from the Halcyon were clearer now, more distinct. She could feel Jordan's mind, his thoughts. She could feel the trust he had placed in her. "I am here," she whispered, her voice trembling in the vastness of space. "I am listening." For the first time, the human responded. "Xylara." His voice came through clearly, though there was no visible connection. "I knew you would." Her heart, if she could even call it that, fluttered. The calmness in his words, the way he spoke without fear, without hesitation, was like a beacon of light cutting through the darkness. She had always been the one to instill fear in others. She had always been the one to command, to dominate. But here, with him, there was no need for fear. "I'm not like the others," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I can't be." Jordan's response was simple, but it carried the weight of everything he had ever believed. "You don't have to be," he said. "You can be whatever you choose to be. It's not too late." The words struck her like a bolt of lightning. For the first time, she felt something shift inside her. Could it really be that simple? Could she truly choose a different path? Could she break free from the chains of fear and embrace something else, something she had never known but always longed for? Xylara took a deep breath, a breath she didn't even know she needed. She could feel the presence of the hive, their thoughts pressing down on her, but for the first time, she didn't feel their power. She felt her own. She took a step forward, leaving the shadow of the hive behind. She had made her decision. The crew of the Halcyon waited in silence. Jordan stood at the front of the ship, his gaze fixed on the darkness of space ahead. He knew that something was happening, but he didn't know what. The signals had changed, the energy in the air had shifted. He could feel it. Xylara was no longer the presence of fear she had been before. Alira joined him, standing beside him quietly. She had seen the way Jordan had focused on the signals, the way he had put everything on the line for a single. Hope? She had been doubtful, but now even she could sense that something was different. "What do you think she'll do?" Elira asked, her voice low. Jordan didn't answer immediately. He just stared out into the vast expanse, as if waiting for an answer to come from the stars themselves. "I think she's ready," he said finally. "I think she's choosing a different way." Elira nodded, though she wasn't sure she completely understood. But she trusted Jordan, and that trust, in itself, felt like a small victory. Zylara stood on the edge of a new beginning, her mind quiet for the first time in ages. The fear that had once defined her was still there, a shadow in the back of her mind, but it no longer controlled her. She had stepped into the light, and for the first time, she felt free. The path ahead was uncertain. She didn't know what the future would hold, but for the first time, she felt ready to face it. And as she reached out with her thoughts, she felt something she had never known before: peace. Zylara stood in the vast emptiness of space, feeling a strange new sense of clarity wash over her. She had made the choice, a choice that would shape her future and the future of her kind. The fear that had once defined her existence now felt distant, like an old, forgotten memory. It no longer controlled her. Instead, she felt something else, something she had never known: hope. The signals from the halcyon had changed once again. They were no longer filled with the tension of fear, but with a quiet kind of peace. Zylara could sense that Jordan Vale, the human who had opened her eyes to this new possibility, was waiting. He was still out there, his thoughts filled with trust, and something deep inside her felt the connection between them. They were no longer enemies. They were no longer creatures of fear. They were something new, something unknown. Her decision to walk away from the hive had not been easy. The pressure from Karez and the other Virel was immense. They had tried to convince her that her hesitation was a weakness. They had urged her to return to the path of fear, the only path they knew. But she had chosen differently. She had chosen to embrace the possibility of change. Zylara took a deep breath, though it wasn't something she physically needed. It was a gesture of release, a symbol of letting go of the past. As she opened her mind, she reached out, her thoughts flowing through the vast expanse of space. "I have made my choice," she whispered, though she wasn't sure if anyone could hear her, "and I will not turn back." On the halcyon, Jordan felt the shift in the air. He had been waiting, watching the signals, sensing the changes. And then, like a spark in the dark, he felt her presence. Stronger now, more certain. Zylara had made her decision. She had chosen a different path. He stood up from the console, his heart racing. He had believed in her, even when others had doubted. He had believed that she could change. And now, in this moment, it felt as though everything he had hoped for was finally coming true. "Captain," Jordan said, his voice filled with excitement. "She's here. Zylara is ready." Elira stepped into the room, her eyes filled with both concern and curiosity. "Are you sure? How do you know?" Jordan smiled, his eyes reflecting the confidence he felt. "I just know. She's different. She's not the same being we met when we first arrived. She's evolved." Elira stood silently for a moment, processing his words. It was hard to believe that the creature they had feared so much was now on the verge of something new. But as she looked at Jordan's face, she saw the certainty in his eyes. He had always trusted his instincts. And right now, his instincts were telling him that the future was about to change. In the quiet of her dimension, Zylara felt a weight lift off her shoulders. The hive's influence was still there, but it no longer felt like a suffocating presence. Instead, it was like a distant echo, something she could choose to ignore. The fear that had once been her ally was now silent, like a shadow that had faded with the rising sun. She felt the connection to Jordan grow stronger, as though their thoughts were intertwining across the vast distance. It was strange, this sense of unity between them. It was as though they had become a part of each other, even though they were so far apart. Zylara closed her eyes, allowing herself to feel the warmth of the moment. She was no longer the leader of the Virel. She was no longer a creature of darkness and fear. She was something new, something that had been born from the courage of a single human. On the Halcyon, the crew watched in awe as the signals continued to change, becoming clearer and more peaceful with each passing moment. It was as if the very atmosphere of the ship had shifted. The tension that had hung in the air for so long was gone. There was only calm, only a sense of anticipation. Jordan stood at the front of the ship, staring out at the dark expanse of space. He had come here to find answers, to discover what lay beyond the known. But he had found something far greater than he had ever imagined. He had found hope, not just for the Virel, but for all of them. "Are you ready?" Illyra asked, stepping beside him. Jordan nodded, his eyes never leaving the stars. "I am, and I believe she is too." In the void of space, Zylara made the final step. She was no longer the creature of fear that had once haunted the galaxy. She was something new, something born from the courage of a human and the strength of her own will. The darkness no longer held her in its grip. "I am not afraid," she said, her voice carrying through the emptiness. And for the first time, she truly believed it. Zylara felt the presence of the Halcyon drawing near. She could feel the humans' thoughts, his hope, his unwavering belief that change was possible. As she approached the ship, she no longer felt the need to hide in the shadows. She stepped into the light, ready to face whatever came next. The Virel would never be the same. The galaxy would never be the same. And Zylara, for the first time in her life, knew that she was ready for whatever came next. She had walked away from the darkness. She had chosen the light.